Steve Allison, personal trainer for 25 years. And this morning I want to talk to you about menopausal weight gain. So if you are a menopausal woman or perimenopausal woman, I want you to listen up. So the story is, in our country, we often, so let me back up. So I belong to a few different groups, menopausal groups, to learn for myself and to learn from my clients and to kind of hear what menopausal women are going through and what their mindset is. And what I see, number one, is women tend to treat. Now, let me preface this with saying that I am not menopausal, I am perimenopausal at 46 years old almost. So I approach all this with my knowledge, not actually physically having been through it. I totally recognize that. But what I do see is that so many women will blame their weight gain on menopause and hormones and things like that. And while that is absolutely real, they're also the ones that are posting and their big, huge meals out at restaurants and their processed foods and things like this. So I hear so many women say, I've done everything and I can't lose the weight. I want you to ask yourself, have you really done everything? I mean, so many times we use that as an excuse. And, menopause can do a lot when it comes to your mindset, as in like in a negative way. And so I feel like we get into this snowball of we gain some weight, then we get discouraged, and then we eat some more, and we just continue to get discouraged, and we have all these things going on in our body that are uncomfortable. Our joints are aching, we're not sleeping, our anxiety, our stress level, all of this stuff is building up. And while it can be a storm of a lot of really uncomfortable experiences, we tend to hang our hat on the fact that, well, I'm menopausal and I'm going to weight gain, gain weight, and I'm just going to be angry about it. And I want to encourage you to think about it in a different way. One, note that I just read a recent study that other countries don't experience menopausal weight gain like we do in the US. That says a lot. That says a lot because of the fact that those women in other countries are going through the exact same hormonal changes that we are. It's their environment that they're making differently, and very possibly their mindset. I don't know much about that, but I have to assume that there's a different mindset that goes with this aging process in these other countries where they're not gaining weight. So number one, I started getting interested in menopause because when I worked in a club years ago, I used to have these, I was probably in my 30s, and I had so many women at 41 and 42 come in and say, I don't know what is going on, but I cannot do things the way I used to be able to do things, as in I can't eat the things and I can't exercise the way, like I just keep exercising more and more and it's just not going away. Well, I want to talk to you about that a little bit. So one of the reasons, that's what got me kind of interested in like, what is it with all these 41 and 42-year-olds coming in? It's just really crazy. Even still, my clients that come in are all in that age range between probably 35 and 65, and they're all at various levels of this and stages of this. Fortunately, so many of them have such a great attitude about it, and they're trying to make the changes that will make menopausal symptoms much less. So if I could say one thing, you guys probably know this is coming, but if I could say do one thing to make these changes less, is treat your body like you're a queen and eat really well. Because many of us think about fat loss, I'm kind of on this kick right now about many of us thinking about fat loss as, if I could just lose weight and then I'll be healthy, I'll be the me I want to be. If I could just lose weight and I'll get healthy in the process. So important in any kind of fat loss, as well as menopausal fat loss, to be thinking about the fact that I need to get healthy first so that my body can release fat, because that's exactly how it works. We got to wrap our heads around this. It's not a matter of beating our bodies into submission in the gym and starving ourselves and depriving ourselves and feeling like, oh, I can't eat anything, and then not losing weight anyway and just being depressed about it. We got to look at it from a completely different perspective about the fact that this body you have is a gift, and we have got to learn to change our mindset and treat it like it's the gift that it is, okay? Even if it's not treating you super well right now, once you start turning that ball around and you start eating real foods that your body recognizes, I cannot say this enough, when you start to eat real foods that your body recognizes, it will start to thank you. It'll say, oh, I can finally let go of some of this fat because you were stressing me out and you were bogging down your liver with all these weird artificial colors and flavors and chemically processed foods and environmental toxins and all these things coming in. You were stressing me out. Now that I got clean water, I have fresh air, I have real food that I can recognize, I know what to do. I can now focus on your metabolism, because did you know that a large part of the liver's role is metabolism? So is the thyroid, okay? So knowing those two things, we're gonna kind of dip into now more of the menopausal, some things you can do if you're a menopausal woman that's really struggling with how to get that extra weight, or even perimenopausal, that extra weight that's coming on. Number one, I feel that if you are a perimenopausal woman, you should start to treat yourself. Don't wait until you get to this point where weight loss is a real struggle. Start to treat yourself right now as though you were a menopausal woman, because you're gonna be building that health. You don't want to get to that point of being like 52, hitting menopause, and all of a sudden you run into a brick wall, and now you have to learn all these new skills, new eating methods, and new ways to work out, and all these changes, and in a state of discouragement. So I really encourage you to start now with the eating real foods and making those steps as though you were a menopausal woman, because you will be, right? So first thing to note, menopause and the weight gain is not just about the hormones that you think it is. I mean, we often just think of menopause as being about estrogen, but there's a whole lot, because those of you that don't understand this part, menopause is basically you are running out of estrogen. Estrogen has been our reproductivity, or our reproduction hormone all this time. It has been actually our muscle building hormone all of this time. It plays with other hormones in a positive way. For example, I don't want to get too deep into this, but it plays with insulin. So insulin is our blood sugar regulating hormone. When estrogen is present in the body, it plays with insulin well. It helps to kind of keep us in a better state of blood sugar control when we have estrogen. All right. Estrogen also helps to manage cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone. When estrogen is present, cortisol, the stress hormone that typically stores belly fat, does not have as big an effect on our body in the terms of fat gain or fat loss as it does when estrogen is present. It doesn't have as big an effect as when estrogen is not. So menopause, by definition, is our decline of estrogen, which is why these other hormones that we don't even think about in relationship to estrogen or menopause come into play. All of a sudden, these two other hormones, our sugar hormone, we'll call it insulin, and our stress hormone, cortisol, now are playing a really big role in our bodies now that estrogen is not there to help balance them out. I hope that really makes sense to you, especially from the standpoint of if you are perimenopausal, you haven't hit it yet, but you're kind of starting to see some signs of maybe joints hurting, skin getting more dry, losing some hair, maybe you are putting a little bit of weight on, and things are just starting to shift as maybe you're in your 40s. Those are things that we don't often think about, that stuff is going on inside that we can absolutely control. As in, if my estrogen is declining, and estrogen used to help my blood sugar levels balance, but now my estrogen is declining, so my blood sugar is slowly rising, one thing you could do is just to really start getting that checked on a pretty regular basis and see what's going on with your blood sugars. Same thing with cortisol. It's a whole different thing to test your cortisol. However, if you are starting to notice that things are you're getting a little more anxious about things are really like stressing you out that didn't used to stress you out, things are just eating at you more, your tolerance for people is less, then know that that is cortisol coming into play. And while estrogen used to balance out that cortisol, as estrogen's declining, that cortisol is rising. So when estrogen is not there, those two hormones of insulin and cortisol are turning into fat storage hormones, okay? So we need to learn to control those two hormones. The other part of that story is that when insulin and cortisol, the sugar hormone and the stress hormone, are floating around in the bloodstream together at the same time, that's like a fat storage bomb right there. So if you are a stressed person and you're eating a bunch of sugar, bad combo, okay? So that's one thing that we can do. So two things I would start with. One, well, I got lots of things to start with. Number one, start now eating whole real foods, as few as packaged foods, processed foods, weird colored foods, foods that your body doesn't really know what it is. If they weren't back here in the 1900s, just don't eat it. If you are eating a lot of fried foods as well. So number one, start with that. Number two, do everything that you can to reduce your cortisol or your stress levels. Now, this is good not only for fat loss, of course, but this is good for general health. Really important for general health for us to be decreasing these stress levels. But when it comes